Lindiwe had always dreamed of seeing the ocean, so when her husband, Musa, invited her on a family trip to Mombasa, she was thrilled. At just 19, this was her first time leaving the village. She packed her best dress, tied her braids neatly, and carried a shy but hopeful smile. Maybe this would be her chance to feel like part of the family. Maybe they would like her. But the dream shattered on the very first day. While everyone laughed by the pool and took selfies with fruity drinks, Lindiwe was handed a pile of dishes. "Help us out," one of Musa's aunties said, not even bothering to say please. That same night, while the others feasted on grilled fish and prawns, she stood in the hot kitchen, sweating over pots. No one asked if she'd eaten. No one offered to help. What hurt most was Musa's silence, her husband, her friend. He sat comfortably with his cousins, sipping soda and scrolling on his phone, while she scrubbed the floor barefoot. Not once did he speak up. Not once did he look at her with concern. They didn't even call her by name. "The helper," they whispered, giggling behind her back. She could feel their eyes, full of judgment. Her heart ached, but she smiled through it. She didn't want to cause trouble. She didn't want to embarrass Musa. But deep inside, something was starting to break, a quiet crack in her spirit that no one seemed to notice. The sun was shining, the waves were calm, and laughter filled the air. To anyone watching from the outside, it looked like the perfect vacation. But for Lindiwe, it was a silent heartbreak in paradise. While the rest of the family went on boat rides, taking pictures in matching outfits and enjoying seafood by the ocean, Lindiwe was in the back, bent over a basin, washing clothes by hand. Her fingers were sore. Her back ached. No one offered to help. No one even thanked her. They didn't see her as a guest. They didn't see her as family. They called her the helper, as if she didn't have a name. They made fun of her accent, laughing when she spoke, mimicking the way she said words. "Where did Musa find this one?" someone whispered. She heard it. She heard it all. But the worst part wasn't the chores. It wasn't the jokes. It was watching Musa, her own husband, sit on a yacht, laughing with his cousins like everything was fine, like she didn't exist. Not once did he check on her. Not once did he ask, "Are you okay?" He didn't see the tired in her eyes. Or maybe he did, and chose to ignore it. Lindiwe tried to stay strong. She smiled when spoken to, nodded when given orders. But every night, when everyone else was asleep, she sat on the tiny balcony with her knees pulled to her chest, tears silently falling down her cheek. This wasn't a vacation. It was a quiet punishment. And the paradise she had dreamed of felt more like a golden cage. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the resort. But Lindiwe barely noticed. Her arms were shaking from carrying bags of groceries, cleaning supplies, and bottles of water up 3 flights of stairs. Everyone else was relaxing, sipping juice on the balcony, their laughter echoing through the halls. Musa wasn't around. He had gone out with his cousins again, leaving her behind like always. She had asked for help earlier, just a little. Her voice had been soft, almost afraid. "Can someone help me with the bags?" she said. No one responded. One of the aunties rolled her eyes. So she had done it all herself, one step at a time, sweat dripping down her back, legs trembling. When she finally reached the villa with the last load, everything went blurry. Her breath grew short. Her knees buckled. And then, darkness. She fainted right there, at the doorway. But instead of panic or care, she woke up to a sharp voice cutting through the air. Her sister-in-law stood over her, not with worry, but with disgust. "You should have stayed in the village if you can't handle simple work," she snapped. Lindiwe blinked through her dizziness, her heart breaking all over again. No water. No one asked if she was okay. No comforting hand. Just cold eyes and cruel words. She sat up slowly, her head spinning, tears stinging the corners of her eyes. Not from the fall, but from the way they saw her, like she was nothing, like she didn't matter. She had left her home, her dreams, everything she knew, to be a part of this family. And this is what she got? Humiliation, isolation, pain. In that moment, something shifted deep inside. This wasn't just exhaustion. This was the final straw. Lindiwe sat alone near the back kitchen of the resort, her clothes damp with sweat, her hands sore, and her heart even heavier. She stared at the ground, trying not to cry again. The sound of laughter floated from the main villa, but it felt like a world away. No one noticed she was gone. No one ever did. She pulled out her old phone. Its screen cracked at the corner. and just held it for comfort. It was the only thing that still connected her to her own world, her real world, the one she'd left behind when she married Musa. She pressed the power button, not expecting much. The battery was low, like her spirit, but then it lit up and it rang. Her heart skipped. The name on the screen read, Mr. Chika. Her hands shook as she answered. Hello? Lindiwe, came a deep, excited voice. It's Chika, Mr. Chika from Lagos. I've been trying to reach you. She blinked, confused. Yes, it's me. Girl, your sketches, your designs, they're everywhere. People are reposting them like crazy. Vogue Africa just called me. They want to interview you. You, Lindiwe. Are you really in Mombasa right now? Her mouth dropped open. For a moment, she couldn't speak. She just sat there, frozen, as his words wrapped around her like a warm blanket. Vogue Africa, her work, going viral. I'm here, she whispered, her voice cracking. I'm in Mombasa. Chika laughed. Good. Stay right there. I'm sending a team. We're coming to you. She hung up and just stared at the phone. The same hands they called rough, the same voice they laughed at, the same girl they called the helper, had just been seen by the world. Tears rolled down her cheeks. But these weren't the silent tears of pain anymore. These were tears of hope, of fire, of something waking up inside her. The same place that broke her heart was about to witness her rise. The next morning, the air around the resort felt normal. Sunny skies, the smell of breakfast, and the usual noise of Lindiwe's in-laws chatting and laughing. Lindiwe, as always, was nowhere near the table. They didn't notice. They never did. But everything changed when a sleek, black luxury SUV rolled up to the resort's front entrance. It wasn't just any car. It gleamed under the sun, spotless, expensive, powerful. Heads turned. The receptionist stood up straighter. Two well-dressed assistants stepped out, both wearing sharp black suits and sunglasses. They looked like they had stepped out of a fashion magazine. One of them walked up to the front desk, holding a tablet. We're here to meet Ms. Lindiwe Mogul, he said. She's expecting us. Vogue Africa requested this appointment. She's the fashion innovator. The receptionist blinked, confused. Ms. Who? By this time, a few family members had wandered over, curious. Musa's aunt, the same one who had once called Lindiwe the helper, raised an eyebrow. Sorry, she said, laughing nervously. You must be mistaken. There's no one here by that name. But just then, Lindiwe stepped into the lobby. She wore a stunning dress, sleek, bold, and breathtaking. It wasn't store-bought. It was one of her own designs. She had stayed up all night adjusting the seams, fixing the neckline, pouring herself into the fabric, and now she wore it like armor. The assistants turned and smiled. Ah, Ms. Mogul, there you are. Every head snapped toward her. The maid they had mocked, the village girl they ignored, the one they handed dishes to without thanks. Musa's cousin dropped his glass. The room went silent. Lindiwe walked with calm steps. No anger, no show, just power in her silence. She greeted the assistants softly and shook their hands with grace. And as they escorted her to the waiting SUV, cameras began to flash. The same family who told her she didn't belong was now speechless. She didn't need revenge. She had something better, recognition. And for the first time in days, maybe even in months, Lindiwe smiled. Not for them, for herself. Lindiwe stepped out of the black SUV like a new woman. Gone was the girl who washed dishes and carried heavy loads without a word. Now, she wore a beautiful designer dress, one she had created herself from a simple sketch. The fabric hugged her perfectly, shining with colors that seemed to tell her story of strength and hope. Behind her, her PR team walked confidently, carrying cameras, phones, and notes. They were ready to tell the world about her. As she walked toward the villa, heads turned. The same family that had ignored her, mocked her, and treated her like a servant suddenly found their eyes glued to her every move. They whispered among themselves, unsure what to say or do. Her sister-in-law, the one who had shouted cruel words at her, suddenly smiled nervously. Musa's cousins pulled out their phones, trying to take pictures, hoping maybe some of Lindiwe's new light would rub off on them. "Lindiwe, wait!" one of them called. "Let's take a picture together." But Lindiwe didn't stop. She didn't turn around. She walked right past them, her head held high, her eyes shining with quiet power. She didn't need their approval or their fake smiles. She didn't want to share this moment with the people who had made her feel small. In that moment, she was more than just a wife or a helper. She was a creator, a woman rising from pain and silence into the bright light of her own success. The villa seemed smaller now, as if the walls that once held her down could no longer contain her spirit. Her footsteps were steady and sure. Each step was a message. She was done being invisible. And for the first time, Musa looked at her differently, but it was too late. Lindiwe had already started her new journey, one she would walk alone if she had to, because now she knew her own worth. Musa saw her standing there, glowing in her designer dress, surrounded by the buzz of reporters and cameras. For the first time, everyone was looking at Lindiwe, not as a servant, not as the helper, but as someone important, someone powerful. His chest tightened. He wanted to reach out, to hold her hand, to show the world they were together. He stepped forward and gently reached for her hand. But Lindiwe pulled away, quick and sure, like a shield protecting herself from old wounds. Her eyes locked on his, filled with a mixture of pain and anger that he had never seen before. "When they treated me like trash," she said, her voice calm but sharp, "you said nothing. You watched and stayed silent while I worked like a servant. Not one word, not one look." Musa opened his mouth, but no words came out. He wanted to explain, to say he didn't know, to say he was sorry, but everything felt too late. The shame in his eyes grew heavier. "And now," Lindiwe continued, "now that the cameras are flashing and people see me, suddenly you remember you're my husband. Suddenly you want to hold my hand." She shook her head slowly, tears forming, but held back. "You weren't there when I needed you, when they laughed at me, when they mocked my accent, when I cried silently in this same house. You stayed quiet, so don't act like this is about us now." Musa looked down, unable to meet her gaze. He felt small, like the man he should have been but never was. The words he had left unsaid echoed in his mind. Lindiwe took a deep breath and stepped away, her back straight, her spirit unbroken. She didn't need his pity or his sudden attention. In that moment, Musa realized that no fame, no lights, no applause could fix the damage his silence had caused. She had found her strength alone, and maybe that was the hardest truth of all. As soon as the cameras caught that powerful moment between Lindiwe and Musa, the video spread like wildfire online. Within hours, clips of her walking confidently in her own designer dress, pulling away from Musa's hand and speaking her truth, were all over TikTok and Instagram. The caption read, "Wife mocked as maid turns out to be rising fashion icon." People couldn't stop watching. They shared it again and again, amazed by how calm and strong she stayed, even when faced with hurt and silence for so long. The comments flooded in from all over Africa and beyond. "Wow, she handled that with so much grace," one person wrote. "She didn't yell or fight back. She just showed her power in silence. That's real strength. From helper to fashion queen, I'm crying. This is the kind of story we need." Many talked about how common it was for women like Lindiwe to be ignored or mistreated, but rarely did anyone stand up and shine the way she did. She became a symbol for those who felt invisible, unheard, and unvalued in their own homes or families. Some even shared their own stories, saying how they related to Lindiwe's pain and were inspired by her rise. The hashtags #Lindiwe Mwal, from Maid to Mogul, and Silent Strength trended across social media platforms. Bloggers and journalists picked up the story, calling her a new face of African fashion and a voice for women everywhere. Through all the attention, Lindiwe stayed quiet but proud. She didn't need to say much. Her confidence and calm spoke louder than words ever could. The world was watching now, and for the first time, Lindiwe felt seen, not just by strangers online, but by herself. The girl who had been pushed down was rising higher than anyone had expected. Lindiwe didn't shout or throw insults at the family that had treated her badly. She didn't need to. Her quiet strength was louder than any angry words. Instead, she took a different path, one full of purpose and pride. Back in Mombasa, she organized a fashion pop-up event. It was small, but powerful. She invited women artisans from nearby villages, women who worked with their hands just like she used to, creating beautiful fabrics and designs that told their stories. Together, they displayed clothes that were not just fashion, but a celebration of their culture, their talent, and their resilience. The pop-up was a huge success. People came from all over the city to see the unique pieces, to hear the stories behind them, and to support these women who often went unnoticed. Lindiwe stood quietly by, welcoming guests with a soft smile, proud of what she had built. Her in-laws were invited too, but she ignored them completely. When they tried to approach, hoping to be part of her new world, she didn't respond. No harsh words, no confrontations, just silence. That silence said everything. It spoke of respect she no longer gave them, and of the power she found within herself. She had changed the story. From being called the helper and mocked for her accent, she had become a leader and a role model. Her quiet actions were a message to everyone. You don't have to fight with noise to be heard. Sometimes the strongest power is in rising above and letting your success speak for itself. People admired her more than ever, not just for her fashion, but for the way she carried herself with grace and dignity. Lindiwe's silence was no longer a sign of weakness. It was the loudest statement she could make. And in that calm, peaceful power, she found something even better than revenge. She found freedom. Back in Lagos, Lindiwe stood tall in front of the bright lights of a big fashion studio. She was no longer the quiet girl from Mombasa who was ignored and treated like a maid. Now, she was the face of a major African fashion campaign, her name known across the continent. Cameras flashed and reporters asked questions, but she remained calm and confident. During an interview, she smiled softly and shared her story. "That trip to Mombasa broke me," she said quietly, "but that phone call from Mr. Chika rebuilt me." Her voice held strength and hope. "People judged me because I was quiet. They thought I didn't matter, but never underestimate a woman just because she's quiet." She talked about the pain she felt being treated like she was invisible, and how hard it was to watch the people she loved ignore her suffering. But she also spoke about the power of believing in herself, even when no one else did. Sometimes, silence isn't weakness. It's waiting for the right moment to shine. Her journey from a struggling young woman carrying heavy loads in a distant resort to becoming a fashion mogul inspired many. People saw her as proof that no matter where you start, you can rise. They admired her for turning pain into power and for doing it with grace. Lindiwe knew her life had changed forever, but she never forgot where she came from. Her quiet strength had opened doors, not just for her, but for many women who dreamed of more. And now, with the world watching, she was ready to show them all just how far a quiet woman could go.